For the intro to my Common App essay, I wanted to make sure it stood out, but also that it was really engaging. So I wanted to make sure to capture an event that was really eye-catching and would grab the reader's attention from the start, but I didn't really want to spoil the main point of the essay. So I chose to focus on my fear of mushrooms and why I was afraid of them. My first paragraph was, as a child, I was irrationally afraid of mushrooms, particularly sliced ones. The intimidating slices always had a curved top attached to a rectangular stalk. To me, these pieces resembled faces, staring out at me from their two curved top eyes. The worst offenders resided on pizzas, poisoning the melted layers of cheese atop my favorite dish. I believe that they were always staring at me, judging my every move despite their inanimate nature. Nobody understood the anxiety provoked by this harmless fungus, but personally, I could not get over the fact that the mushroom's eyes were watching me. So it is in fact true that I didn't like how mushrooms' faces or eyes stared at me, but the reason I included this quirky idea was to transition to the idea I wanted to talk about in the next paragraph of my essay, which is basically my fear of eye contact. My second paragraph was dedicated to explaining the link between my fear of mushrooms and my fear of eye contact. So although I don't think my fear of mushrooms actually caused my fear of eye contact, they worked in well with the essay and it transitioned together really well in a way that I liked, so I decided to include it anyways. So my second paragraph stated, my childhood fear of the judgment that mushrooms' eyes held became a fear of eye contact during my childhood. I was anxious that others were critiquing me with every glance. My reserved nature stemmed from this fright, and the thought of speaking in front of people was enough to make sweat perspire on my forehead. But I no longer wanted to be characterized by my fear, nor did I want it to prevent me from communicating with others. One day in 6th grade, I reached towards my face and removed my glasses, turning the world into an abstract portrait. So I basically described my fear in the second paragraph to explain why I was afraid of it. But instead of just saying it made me uncomfortable and that I didn't like eye contact, I explained how it affected me, saying like, oh, sweat's perspiring from my forehead, I'm super anxious. These details make a huge difference. It's all part of the show not tell narrative. It makes a big difference when you explain why you're afraid of something rather than just saying you were, because it helps the reader make those connections and justify what you're saying. My second paragraph also acted as transition into my next major point, my solution, which in this case was blindness. So I basically explained what I did because of my fear of eye contact. It's not enough to just move from not liking something or being afraid of it to suddenly changing your mind. And I see this in a lot of students' essays. There's a lack of a catalyst or a changing point or a turning point that basically makes you change your mind from point A to point B. You can't just assume the admissions officer knows what's going on inside your head. You have to explain it. You have to explain what made you change your mind or change your stance on something. So that's what I strive to do within this paragraph. So see if you can spot my growth within this third paragraph as I change my confidence. My 2200 vision was no longer a weakness, but rather a strength. When I spoke, I did not fear eye contact, as others' eyes resembled circles, empty of emotion and detail. This impairment allowed me to overcome my fear of communication, and I readily embraced my new persona. When my name was called, I could confidently rise up and express my opinion without worrying about my classmates' piercing stares. I was not afraid to be the person who cuts the awkward silence in a room. It was this newfound discovery that sparked my love for public speaking and fostered my passion for speech and debate. Something I previously dreaded became something that I voluntarily adored. By including these details, I was able to show in my third paragraph exactly why I loved removing my glasses. I talked about how I didn't have to see anyone staring at me, basically, and how it improved my public speaking and confidence. So when you make claims within essays like this, you must back them up with evidence. This is what I strive to do within this essay by describing why I loved removing my glasses and how it helped me out in the end. These details, like I said before, make such a difference. You can't just assume your admissions officer knows what's going on inside your head. So in this case, it clarifies the situation for them and describes the effects of what you actually did. However, with my makeshift solution, I face some consequences. Obviously, when you remove your glasses, you cannot see anyone, if you have bad vision like me, or the facial expressions they're making. So I made this clear within my fourth paragraph. During my presentations, I forced myself to understand that the clumps of color before me were people. This cognitive dissonance often confused me. I was uncertain about whether I was staring at everyone's eyes. Nevertheless, my pupils surveyed the room and rested upon different audience members when needed. My eyes could have been gazing at the audience's foreheads, but the feedback praising my strong eye contact assured me otherwise. So I basically used this detail as the catalyst that made me upset enough to realize that maybe putting on my glasses wasn't such a bad thing after all. I started to realize that my confidence had been built up, and I might be able to face my earlier fear of eye contact, just in this case because the consequences were outweighing the pros. Not being able to see people and not being able to see the expressions that they were making in front of me actually ended up being worse than having to see them and being worried about what they were thinking. So I basically talked about these different consequences within my 4th paragraph, which I just read, and my 5th paragraph, which I'm about to read right now. So in my 5th paragraph, I said, "Through time, my strategy began to weaken. I could hardly make out the words my teachers wrote and became reliant on squinting to catch a glimpse of the world. Students and teachers alike joked about my squinting, urging that I wear the glasses I owned. Still, my hands could never reach for the frames. I was not fully aware that with every glance I dodged, I lost the opportunity to connect and see. It was not enough to listen. To truly hear someone, I had to be able to see their perspective and likewise see them." So in this paragraph, I talked about essentially everything I was missing out on, and I became aware of it. And what you might have noticed is I actually speak in this paragraph from a present point of view, which means I'm criticizing my past self, because now you can tell in the essay that I was aware of what I was doing and why I was wrong, and basically all the things that I was missing out on. So this is kind of like the self-reflection in the paragraph, and it makes you basically see that I'm aware of what I'm doing and that I wanted to change it. My 6th paragraph finally shows me overcoming my fear. Whether I was performing as Cesar Chavez with my iconic Si Se Puede sign at a history competition, or giving a biology presentation on Joseph Lister, I felt distant. So, halfway through junior year, I did the unthinkable. I put my glasses back on. The fear of the world that was previously instilled in me dissipated, as those around me encouraged and supported me. Although I still prefer my pizzas plain, my life is now anything but. So notice how within this essay, I describe everything that went into me changing my perspective and basically overcoming my fear. Like, I didn't suddenly go from being afraid of talking in front of crowds to suddenly loving to perform and loving to give presentations in class and everything. Like, that's not how it works in real life, and I think the admissions officers know that. So I made sure to include details and include these events. And also another thing, I wanted the admissions officers to see my dedication to this and my passion, and to show that I was actually trying over time. And so I wanted them to also see my unique approach to the situation. It wasn't just straightforward, like practice till you make perfect. I went through a rough journey to get to where I was. So when you think back into the activity that I did at the very beginning, where I asked you to use adjectives and phrases to describe yourself, and then include events that show yourself in those phrases without actually using them, that's what I did within this essay. Because I didn't want to actually like upfront say like, I was dedicated, or I had a unique approach to thinking about things, or I thought outside the box. Instead, I used these events that indirectly characterized me as this way. So that way, the admissions officers reading this were able to tell that about me. Also, I just wanted to note within the 6th paragraph, the very last sentence that I said was, "Although I still prefer my pizzas plain, my life is now anything but." So I basically did this in order to bring things full circle and reference that intro and the joke I made about pizza at the very beginning, because I think the most successful essays follow through the analogies they use, especially in the intro paragraph. You can't just use a quirky analogy just to get their eyes, basically, or their attention, and then not follow through with it, so that's what I tried to do. My final paragraph talks about how I want to use my experience to help others. So in this one I stated, "I can finally get to know who people really are, beyond the blurred faces to which I was accustomed. Facial expressions convey what words cannot, and often show the true feelings someone is harboring. I plan to pay attention to these hints of insight and to proactively strive to be the person that others feel comfortable around. I know what it feels like to shelter myself, and I want to help those around me reach past what secludes them. Looking through the world through my plastic lenses, I now feel invincible, and no stare can take that away." So in this last paragraph, I wanted to show colleges that I was selfless and motivated to help those around me overcome their fears as well. Because after all, I don't really see a point in telling this entire story and showing the lessons I learned and the things that I overcame without explaining how I was going to use what I learned to help those around me. So in that case, I ended this essay on a good note and showed that I was actually a selfless individual who's hoping to help those in her community, friend group, and family in general. Basically anyone around me who needs that help and knows what I went through and needs the same thing. Even my final sentence, which was, "Looking at the world through my plastic lenses, I now feel invincible, and no stare can take that away," shows that I'm now confidently approaching life and keeping on the glasses that make me feel invincible. And it wraps around that entire idea where I was like first afraid of wearing them because I didn't want to see people, and now suddenly they make me more confident. So my character development is really obvious in this essay. And this is what people mean when they say show, don't tell. Because in this case, you can see why I did the things I did and why those actions were associated with the feelings at every single moment in my essay. Because I used so many details and made it easier for you to link each event throughout this timeline, honestly. This essay topic was really important to me. Although it really wasn't life-changing, it still taught me a lot about myself, and it was really important in ways that I can't really describe within my essay. And so I think a lot of people approach this Common App essay thinking they need a giant turning point that happened within their life to actually get into college. However, a lot of the times we learn lessons every day in the ordinary things, and people just look over these. Like, honestly, when you're thinking about brainstorming your essays, sometimes they just come to you in the most random moments because you think about or do something that makes you think, wow, this could be a great essay. And I wish that I could describe that in any other way, but a lot of the times when I sat down to actually write my essays, I blanked. But later on, when I was literally like about to go to sleep, I suddenly started thinking about ideas and things that happened to me that I thought were insignificant that could be formulated into a good essay. So before even starting my essay for this, I drafted the core idea that I wanted to explain within my essay. So for me, within this essay, my core idea was my journey through public speaking. So first I went from being afraid of people watching me speak to removing my glasses in order to feel comfortable around people watching me speak, to then being able to do it by myself, just staring at people and seeing their eye contact and their emotions and everything. So I didn't really just dive into paragraphs right away because I think that's super stressful, but kudos to whoever can do it. I instead used bullet points to kind of organize my ideas. That way I had like a chronological timeline and I could like easily insert events and stuff like that and basically make sure that it fits before I actually construct an essay. And I thought this helped me a lot when I was writing the essay, and I would definitely recommend it. So after I thought about the main idea I wanted to convey within this essay, I realized I needed an analogy that like conveyed to glasses or eyes or public speaking in some sort of way. So for me, this is probably the most difficult part because this is the part you see right when you open an essay. This is the part that basically makes you really interested in an essay from the start or not interested and kind of bored from the beginning, which is not a good sign. So for me, I actually forgot about my fear of mushrooms until someone like around me ordered a mushroom pizza, and then I was like, wait, like, ew, that's kind of gross. And then I was like, wait, oh my God. I remember when I was afraid of those because they look like eyes, and then suddenly like everything came to me in that very moment. A lot of the times you can't force yourself to sit down and brainstorm and do this kind of stuff. It honestly just comes to you sometimes within those moments. However, if you do want to brainstorm, I would recommend looking into your childhood fears like I did, weird talents that you have, or just unique traditions that you follow. So like for one student that I was helping, it was like her love of kombucha. Like she had it like every single hour for multiple years. So like anything that you have like that is also another great thing to focus on, because I guarantee that nobody else's name can really fit on top of that paper. Definitely makes you super unique and it has a story for you.